I've closed over 3.5 million in high ticket sales, and while not every deal wraps up in a single conversation, the majority of them do. And before you think I was born with some supernatural closing talent, let me be real with you. Just 3 years ago, I was having full-blown panic attacks before every sales call. I was stuttering, I was sweating profusely, I was a mess. But here's what changed everything, and it's not what you think. It wasn't learning more objection handling techniques. It wasn't memorizing better scripts. The shift actually happened when I realized that the best closers don't get objections in the first place. Period. End of story. I said what I said. So today, I'm lifting the veil. I'm giving you what you actually need, okay? So the exact framework that took me from having constant anxiety before my calls, on my calls, to consistently one-call closing prospects. So if you're ready to stop hearing, let me think about it, and just start getting decisions on every call, then let's dive in. So here's the truth that no one's telling you. Here is where traditional sales training has it completely backwards. The thing that nobody wants to admit is that if you are getting objections at the end of your calls, you've already lost. You have already lost. Most sales training teaches you to pitch first and then handle the objections later. Think about it this way. If someone truly understands their problem and you have the solution, what objections could they possibly have? The issue is not your closing technique or the way that you objection handle, and it is not your script. It's that you haven't built a strong enough foundation in discovery. You haven't gotten to the truth. And I get it. I used to think the same way. I used to think that if I had better analogies, if I had better objection handling frameworks, then yeah, I'd close more deals. But the reality is top closers never get objections because they've already addressed every concern in discovery. So that's the difference. It's knowing how to do that. Now, before I break down these 3 phases, let me paint you a picture because what I'm about to show you is going to make everything crystal clear. I was reviewing a sales call the other day. This closer was selling marriage coaching, right? Now, this prospect gets on the call, and listen to this. This prospect spends 30 whole minutes complaining about his broken marriage. 30 minutes of my wife doesn't understand me and we fight all the time and I am miserable. This closer just sat there. Let him talk, let him dump all of his pain. And then, this is where it gets interesting. The closer asks, what do you want your marriage to look like? And the man says, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. So the closer thinks, perfect. I've got tons of pain. He knows what he wants. I can pitch. And then he moves into his presentation. Now, here's what the closer was thinking. He was thinking, I crushed it. I crushed this call because look at all that pain I extracted. Everyone says you need tons of pain to make the sale. So he's feeling confident. He's feeling good about his call. Then comes the close. Boom. Objection soup. I need to check my finances. I need to discuss with my wife. I need to wait a couple months because I have a long work trip. So the closer's sitting there just confused, feeling bamboozled because he's like, oh, I got so much pain. How did this happen? You see what happened here? This closer made the same mistake that 95% of closers make. He thought that pain was enough. He thought that because someone complains about their problems for 30 minutes, they're ready to solve them. But here's what he missed. Because pain without the right foundation is just complaining. And complainers do not buy. Problem solvers buy. So let's segue into phase 1. You want to start by having a prospect discuss their future state, the warm fuzzies, as I like to call it. What is it that they actually want behind the superficial goal? When someone tells me that they want to hit 10K months, for examples, I don't just nod and then move on. I have them describe why that number specifically. What does it actually look like when they have achieved that? What difference does that make in their life in detail? Who does that allow them to be? I get them emotionally connected to the outcome before we even discuss what's been getting in the way. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is the reality check. So only after they're emotionally invested in their goal do I help them realize the gap. Here's the key. I don't tell them what their problems are. I see so many closers do this where they're telling the prospect, here's the problem, here's what you need. You need accountability. You need mentorship. I let them discover it themselves. So when they say, on my calls, oh, I'm only closing 20% because I have no idea how to get deep in discovery, that hits a lot differently than me telling them, yeah, You suck at going deep in discovery, and so you need to work on that. They told me. They've self-identified the gap. Now they own it. So the key is asking the right questions so you can actually get them to identify that gap, okay? Now, phase 3 is all about bridging that gap. So by the time I've discussed my offer, they are clear on their dream outcome and they're clear on what's not working. So the offer is the obvious bridge between where they are and where they want to be. And so at this point, they're not investing in coaching. They are investing in that vision that they just painted in detail. So here's why this works. What's happening psychologically here is incredibly important. When you lead with problems, what's not working, all the complaints, what they're struggling with, they are in a negative emotional state. I always say prospects should be feeling empowered when you pitch, so that way they can actually believe that achieving the goal is possible. You don't want them feeling defensive or feeling insecure or even shutting down. A lot of closers do this too. So when you start with their vision, when you start with what it is that they want, you're getting them excited, you're getting them hopeful. And then when reality hits during the discussion about their current state, they feel that gap so much more intensely. And they want to get back to that positive, warm, fuzzy state. So at this point, when you're pitching, your offer is not an expense. It's not a cost, right? It is the vehicle to get them feeling good again about their potential, about what's possible. It's the bridge back to hope. And that is why they back themselves. That is why they close themselves. And this is why you don't get objections. Closing is not about arguing your way past objections. It's not about coming up with the right rebuttals and clapbacks and reframes. If you are getting objections, you already lost the sale in discovery. The real goal is to have deep conversations so that way all the doubts and fears are taken care of. This is how I'm able to close in one call. It's not about putting on pressure. It's about helping them have complete clarity. So if you're tired of hearing, let me think about it, and you're ready to start closing with confidence, check out my free school community. One of my students went from an abysmal 17% close rate to now closing over 40% consistently. And he hit his first $13,000 month within 60 days using this framework. If you're ready to stop wasting time and start leading conversations like a real closer, the link is in the description. So once you learn to sell through discovery instead of objections, you will never struggle with long sales cycles or long sales calls ever again. As always, put your takeaways in the comments section. And if you got value from this, please like and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.